Gracia walked through the front door of her family's estate in Prague, her flight suit still bearing the scent of aviation fuel and the weight of a career her family had spent 3 years trying to destroy. What they didn't know was that in 6 hours she would save the lives of 847 people during the worst hurricane in European history, using skills they had dismissed as reckless showboating. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Her family called her a danger to herself and others. The European Air Force would soon call her a hero. Gracia adjusted the strap of her aviator bag as she stepped into the marble foyer of her family's estate. The bag contained flight logs documenting over 2,000 hours of precision flying, advanced aerobatic certifications that only 12 women in Europe possessed, and commendations from 3 different air forces. But to her family, it represented 3 years of what they considered dangerous rebellion against common sense. The estate felt exactly as she remembered: cold, pristine, and suffocating. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting fractured light across family portraits that conspicuously excluded any images of Gracia in her pilot's uniform. Her mother, Elena, emerged from the sitting room wearing the expression she reserved for discussing family disappointments. "So you've returned," Elena said, her Czech accent sharp with disapproval. "I suppose the military finally came to their senses about letting girls play with fighter jets." She glanced at Gracia's flight suit with the same distaste she might show for muddy boots on Persian rugs. "Your room has been converted into a proper study. The guest quarters will suffice for however long this visit lasts." Gracia's father, Victor, didn't bother rising from his leather armchair in the library. A successful aerospace manufacturer who built components for civilian aircraft, he had never understood why his daughter insisted on flying military jets instead of joining the family business in a respectable capacity. His voice carried through the doorway without warmth or curiosity. "I trust you've finally abandoned this flying nonsense and are ready to discuss real career opportunities. The company could use someone with your technical knowledge in our engineering department, provided you can demonstrate appropriate judgment." The emphasis on appropriate judgment carried 3 years of accumulated frustration with Gracia's career choices. Her younger brother, Alexei, passed through the foyer without acknowledging her presence. At 24, he had already secured a management position in the family aerospace company and was engaged to a banker's daughter, choices that earned him daily praise from their parents. "I heard you crashed another training exercise," he mentioned casually while collecting his coat. "Maybe it's time to consider careers that don't involve risking expensive government equipment." The casual cruelty in his tone revealed how thoroughly her family had rewritten her service record. Gracia had never crashed during training. In fact, she held the academy record for precision flying and had been selected for advanced tactical training that only the top 2% of pilots ever received. But somewhere along the way, her family had transformed her achievements into failures that confirmed their prejudices about women in combat aviation. No one asked about her recent deployment to the Baltic Sea, where she had flown reconnaissance missions through hostile airspace. No one inquired about the commendation she had received for executing a perfect emergency landing that saved both her aircraft and a civilian fishing vessel caught in military exercises gone wrong. Her expertise in extreme weather flying skills that had taken years to develop remained unknown to people who saw her career as an extended tantrum against family expectations. Elena returned to the conversation with the mechanical efficiency she brought to all unpleasant family business. "Your cousin Katerina is engaged to a pilot for Czech Airlines. Commercial aviation, steady income, reasonable hours. That's the kind of flying career that makes sense for someone who insists on this aviation obsession." The comparison was deliberate and cruel, reducing Gracia's military service to an obsession while elevating commercial aviation as the responsible choice. "I'll be staying for the weekend," Gracia replied with the measured professionalism that had characterized all her family interactions since joining the military. "I have reporting obligations that require my presence in Prague, and this was the most convenient accommodation." She didn't mention that her reporting obligations involved a classified briefing about hurricane preparedness protocols for military aircraft, or that she had been selected as one of only 6 pilots qualified for emergency weather operations. Victor finally emerged from the library, his expression mixing disappointment with resignation. 3 years of this military experiment, and what do you have to show for it? No husband, no children, no practical skills that translate to civilian employment. Your mother and I provided you with every advantage, and you've chosen to waste them on a career that will end the moment you make one serious mistake." The words hit their intended target. Gracia had sacrificed relationships, financial security, and family approval to pursue excellence in one of the most demanding careers imaginable. She had mastered aircraft systems that civilian pilots never encountered, developed reflexes that allowed her to navigate through conditions that would ground commercial flights, and earned the respect of career military officers who understood the difference between competence and recklessness. But standing in her family's foyer, listening to her achievements dismissed as wasteful experimentation, Gracia felt the familiar weight of isolation that accompanied every homecoming. She carried her bag upstairs to the guest room, where her military decorations would remain hidden in the bottom compartment, and her flight logs would stay unread by people who preferred their assumptions to uncomfortable truths. Outside, storm clouds were gathering on the horizon, and meteorologists were tracking what would soon become Hurricane Petra, the most dangerous weather system to threaten Central Europe in recorded history. Within hours, Gracia would need every skill her family had dismissed as reckless showboating to save hundreds of lives and prove that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is play it safe. The next morning brought the kind of family breakfast that Gracia had learned to dread during her military career. Elena had arranged the meal with mathematical precision: fine china, fresh flowers, and an atmosphere of controlled disappointment that permeated every interaction. Victor sat behind his newspaper, occasionally making comments designed to demonstrate his superior understanding of aviation industry realities. "I spoke with Henrik Moravec yesterday," Victor announced, folding his newspaper with deliberate precision. "His daughter completed pilot training with Lufthansa last month. Starting salary of €60,000, excellent benefits, and a career path that doesn't involve playing war games with military equipment." The comparison was intended to highlight everything wrong with Gracia's choices while demonstrating the reasonable alternative she had rejected. Elena contributed her own perspective while serving coffee that Gracia hadn't requested. Henrik mentioned that commercial pilots undergo rigorous safety training. They learn to avoid dangerous weather conditions rather than flying directly into them like some kind of daredevil show. The comment revealed how thoroughly her family misunderstood military aviation requirements and the specialized training that prepared pilots for extreme conditions. Alexei joined the conversation with the confidence that came from never having challenged family expectations. "I read an article about military pilots who struggle to find civilian employment because they're trained for combat situations that don't exist in the real world. Most airlines prefer pilots with commercial backgrounds who understand customer service and fuel efficiency rather than aerial combat maneuvers." The casual dismissal of her training stung more than direct criticism. Gracia had mastered fuel efficiency calculations that exceeded commercial standards, navigation systems that surpassed civilian technology, and emergency procedures that prepared her for situations civilian pilots never encountered. Her military training included everything required for commercial aviation, plus advanced skills that only government-certified instructors could provide. "Your problem has always been this need to prove something," Elena continued, her voice carrying the patient tone she used when explaining obvious truths to difficult children. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Normal women your age are focused on building families and establishing stable homes. This flying obsession is just another way of avoiding adult responsibilities. The reduction of her military career to an obsession demonstrated how completely her family had rejected her choices and achievements. Victor lowered his newspaper to make direct eye contact with his daughter. I've arranged for you to meet with our human resources director next week. We have an opening in our quality assurance department that would utilize your technical knowledge without requiring you to risk your life in military aircraft. It's time to consider practical alternatives to this flying phase. The characterization of her 3-year military career as a phase revealed his fundamental inability to understand her commitment to military aviation. I'm not interested in leaving the military, Gracia replied with the same calm professionalism that had sustained her through difficult conversations with commanding officers and challenging missions. My current assignment requires specialized skills that took years to develop, and I have obligations to my unit that extend beyond personal convenience. She didn't mention that those obligations included hurricane response protocols that might be activated within hours. Elena's expression shifted from disappointment to active frustration. Obligations to strangers who will forget your name the moment you leave their organization, while your own family watches you waste your potential on a career that offers no security, no future, and no respect from people who matter. The dismissal of her military colleagues as strangers demonstrated how completely her family had rejected the bonds and responsibilities that defined military service. Your cousin Katerina called yesterday, Elena continued, obviously relishing the opportunity to make another unfavorable comparison. She wanted to share news about her engagement party next month. She met her fiancé through the airline, a senior captain with 15 years of commercial experience who owns property in 3 countries. That's the kind of stability that comes from making sensible career choices. The implication was clear. Gracia's military service had cost her opportunities for marriage and financial security that her cousin had gained through more practical decisions. Alexei contributed his own perspective with the authority that came from never having risked anything for principles his family didn't understand. Military service might have made sense 50 years ago when Europe faced actual threats, but modern conflicts are handled through diplomacy and economic pressure. The kind of flying you do is basically expensive government training for wars. That will never happen. The dismissal of contemporary military challenges revealed how completely her family had insulated themselves from global realities that required constant vigilance and specialized response capabilities. Gracia had flown missions that supported NATO operations, humanitarian relief efforts, and emergency response operations that saved civilian lives throughout Europe. But to her family, those missions represented expensive theater rather than essential national security work. I received a promotion offer that requires my response by Monday, Gracia said quietly, testing whether any family member would show interest in her professional advancement. The offer involved leading a specialized unit responsible for extreme weather operations recognition that reflected years of training and exceptional performance evaluations from commanding officers who understood her capabilities. Victor's response revealed his complete disengagement from her military career. Promotion in an organization you should be leaving isn't advancement. It's deeper involvement in a mistake that's already cost you 3 years of your life. Real advancement would be accepting civilian employment that offers legitimate career development rather than military training that has no practical application. His dismissal of specialized military skills as impractical demonstrated his fundamental misunderstanding of the complex capabilities required for modern military aviation. By afternoon, The family had assembled their extended social circle for what Alina called a proper welcome home gathering, though Gracia understood it was actually a stage for public intervention designed to pressure her into abandoning her military career. The estate's garden terrace filled with family friends, business associates, and relatives who had known Gracia since childhood but understood nothing about her professional achievements. Alina had spent the morning preparing talking points that would systematically undermine Gracia's credibility, while maintaining the appearance of maternal concern. "We're so worried about her safety," Alina explained to Mrs. Kovar, their longtime neighbor who owned 3 boutique hotels in Prague. "Military flying is so dangerous, and Gracia has always been impulsive. We keep hoping she realizes this phase has gone on long enough." The characterization of her 3-year military career as an impulsive phase was delivered within Gracia's hearing as she helped arrange refreshments on the terrace tables. Every word was calculated to reinforce the narrative that her service represented poor judgment rather than professional excellence. Mrs. Kovar nodded sympathetically, clearly accepting Alina's version without question. Victor joined the conversation, bringing his authority as an aerospace industry professional to support the family's dismissive narrative. "Military pilots are trained for combat scenarios that rarely occur in modern Europe," he explained to his business partner, Mr. Hoffel. "They develop habits that make them unsuitable for civilian aviation, where safety and fuel efficiency matter more than aerobatic stunts." The reduction of her advanced tactical training to aerobatic stunts demonstrated how thoroughly he had mischaracterized her qualifications. Uncle Pavel, who owned a successful construction company, contributed his perspective with the confidence of someone who had never questioned family wisdom. "I told Alina from the beginning that this military experiment would end badly. Girls who try to do men's work usually get hurt, and then expect their families to fix the problems they created for themselves." The casual sexism in his assessment revealed the underlying assumptions that had shaped his family's opposition to her career. Gracia maintained her composure while serving drinks to guests, who discussed her future as if she were an irresponsible teenager rather than a decorated military officer. Her commendations for precision flying, her perfect safety record, and her selection for advanced training programs remained unknown to people who preferred their prejudices to uncomfortable facts about her competence. The conversation took a more deliberate turn when Elena's sister, Aunt Petra, began sharing details about Gracia's cousin Marketa, who had recently married a Lufthansa pilot. Marketa met Thomas through proper channels, the airline's social events for employees and their families. "He's been flying commercially for 8 years, owns a beautiful apartment in Munich, and they're planning children next year. That's what happens when girls make sensible choices about aviation careers." The comparison was designed to highlight everything wrong with Gracia's military service while demonstrating the rewards that came from more conventional career paths. Thomas represented stability, financial security, and social acceptance, everything that Gracia had supposedly sacrificed through her reckless pursuit of military aviation. Aunt Petra delivered the assessment with obvious satisfaction, clearly believing she was providing valuable guidance. Military service might have been appropriate for previous generations, Victor's colleague, Dr. Novak, added with academic authority. But modern conflicts are resolved through economic pressure and diplomatic negotiation. The kind of training Gracia received prepares her for wars that will never happen, while leaving her unprepared for real-world employment that requires practical skills. His dismissal of contemporary military challenges revealed how completely the assembled guests had isolated themselves from global realities. Alexei contributed to the intervention with information designed to demonstrate his superior understanding of aviation industry requirements. "I researched military to civilian pilot transitions last week," he announced. "Most airlines prefer candidates with commercial training because military pilots have developed aggressive flying habits that don't translate well to passenger service. Gracia will probably need 2 years of retraining before any reputable airline would consider hiring her. The casual cruelty of his assessment, delivered as helpful career advice, demonstrated how thoroughly her family had convinced themselves that her military training represented a professional liability rather than advanced qualification. Every guest nodded approvingly, clearly accepting Alexei's research as authoritative, despite his complete lack of aviation experience. The breaking point came when Elena stood to address the entire gathering, using the occasion to make what she called a family announcement about Gracia's future plans. "Victor and I want everyone to know that Gracia has finally decided to leave the military and join our aerospace company in a management position," Elena declared with obvious relief. "We're so proud that she's chosen family responsibility over this dangerous flying obsession that has worried us for years." The blatant lie delivered with confidence to assembled guests represented a complete rewriting of Gracia's actual plans and demonstrated how thoroughly her family had decided to control her narrative rather than acknowledge her autonomy. Every person present accepted Elena's announcement as truth, offering congratulations for a decision that Gracia had never made and would never consider. As the afternoon gathering continued, Gracia excused herself from the terrace and walked inside the estate, ostensibly to refill water glasses but actually to escape the suffocating weight of lies being told about her future. Standing at the foyer kitchen window, she watched her family's guests celebrate a fabricated decision while discussing her military career as a dangerous phase that had finally ended. For the first time since returning home, Gracia felt something fracture inside her chest. Not the familiar disappointment that accompanied family visits, but something sharper and more dangerous. The composed military bearing that had sustained her through challenging missions and family dismissal began to crack under the weight of deliberate humiliation disguised as loving intervention. Her secure military phone buzzed against her hip, the encrypted device that connected her to base operations and emergency response protocols. The message display showed a priority alert that made her pulse quicken with recognition and professional urgency. Hurricane Petra upgraded to Category 4. ALL. Qualified extreme weather pilots report for immediate emergency briefing. Civilian evacuation operations commence 1800 hours. Gracia read the message twice, her training immediately shifting her focus from family drama to the kind of crisis that required every skill her family had dismissed as reckless showboating. Hurricane Petra was tracking directly toward Central Europe with unprecedented intensity, threatening coastal cities and inland areas that had never experienced such extreme weather conditions. Emergency response protocols were being activated across 6 countries, and her specialized training in extreme weather flying had placed her on the short list of pilots qualified for hurricane operations. She glanced through the window at her family's guests, who continued discussing her imaginary career change while completely unaware that meteorologists were tracking the most dangerous storm system in European recorded history. Within hours, civilian aircraft would be grounded, commercial flights canceled, and emergency operations limited to military pilots with specialized extreme weather certifications, qualifications that exactly 3 pilots in the Czech Republic possessed. The irony was perfect and terrible. Her family had spent 3 years dismissing her advanced training as unnecessary preparation for conflicts that would never occur, while nature was preparing to demonstrate exactly why governments invested enormous resources in pilots who could operate aircraft under impossible conditions. The storm approaching Central Europe would require every skill that her family had characterized as reckless stunts and dangerous showboating. Gracia's phone buzzed again with additional operational details: priority mission, civilian evacuation. From offshore platforms, estimated 847 personnel require emergency extraction before hurricane landfall. Only Category 4 certified pilots eligible for platform operations. The message confirmed what she had suspected. This wouldn't be a routine emergency response. but the kind of high-stakes operation that separated qualified military pilots from civilian aviators who had never encountered extreme weather conditions. She pocketed the phone and returned to the terrace, where Alina was still accepting congratulations for Gracia's fictional career change. The contrast between the celebration of her imaginary, civilian future and the approaching crisis that would require her specialized, military training created a surreal atmosphere that felt like watching a play about someone else's life. "Gracia!" Alina called out with obvious satisfaction. "Mrs. Novak was just saying how sensible you've become about choosing practical career paths over dangerous military adventures. She has a nephew who works in airline management who might be able to help you find appropriate civilian employment." The suggestion that she needed help finding appropriate employment revealed how completely her family had rejected her qualifications and achievements. Victor approached with his business partner, both men clearly pleased by what they believed was Gracia's surrender to family pressure. "I've scheduled a meeting with our human resources director for Monday morning," Victor announced. "We can start you in quality assurance at a salary comparable to entry-level commercial pilots, with opportunities for advancement based on performance, rather than dangerous flying stunts." The characterization of her military training as stunts demonstrated his continued inability to understand her actual qualifications. Gracia accepted their congratulations with the same professional composure that had characterized her interactions with difficult commanding officers and challenging mission parameters. She didn't correct Elena's false announcement or defend her military career against their casual dismissal. Instead, she maintained the disciplined bearing that had earned her respect from career military officers who understood the difference between competence and recklessness. But as storm clouds gathered on the horizon and her secure phone continued receiving urgent operational updates, Gracia knew that within hours she would be called upon to demonstrate exactly why governments maintained specialized military aviation units. The skills that her family had dismissed as impractical would soon be the only thing standing between 847 civilian workers and certain death in hurricane conditions that would ground every commercial aircraft in Central Europe. The storm was coming, and it would prove everything that words could never accomplish. At 6:47 p.m., as Elena's guests continued celebrating Gracia's imaginary career change over dinner on the terrace, 3 military vehicles pulled into the estate's circular driveway with the synchronized precision that indicated official emergency business. The convoy moved with measured urgency, not the casual pace of routine transportation, but the coordinated efficiency that accompanied time-critical operations. Gracia recognized the distinctive engine sound before anyone else noticed the approaching vehicles. Her training had taught her to identify military transport by audio signature, and the formation pattern indicated a priority extraction mission rather than routine personnel transport. She set down her untouched dinner plate and walked toward the front entrance, her movement catching Victor's attention. "Now what kind of disruption is this supposed to be?" Victor demanded, his voice carrying the irritation he reserved for situations that might embarrass the family in front of their social circle. "If this is some kind of military harassment designed to pressure you into staying with their organization, I'll be filing complaints with appropriate government authorities." His assumption that any military presence represented harassment revealed how thoroughly he had rejected his daughter's professional obligations. The lead vehicle stopped precisely at the estate's main entrance, followed by 2 support vehicles that positioned themselves with tactical spacing that indicated security protocol activation. Vehicle doors opened simultaneously, creating a sharp report that echoed across the estate grounds and immediately captured the attention of every dinner guest on the terrace. Major Thomas Kratke emerged from the lead vehicle wearing full dress uniform, his bearing indicating the kind of formal military business that demanded immediate attention and absolute professionalism. Behind him stepped Captain Andreas Svoboda and Lieutenant Colonel Pavel Mares, both wearing the same formal attire that suggested an official ceremony or critical mission briefing. Elena appeared in the doorway beside Gracia, her face pale as she processed the evidence that her daughter's military career might be significantly more important than their family had ever understood or acknowledged. The formal uniforms, the coordinated arrival, and the obvious authority of the assembled officers contradicted everything she had told their dinner guests about Gracia's decision to leave the military. "Captain Gracia," Major Kratky addressed her with the respect that accompanied formal military protocol, "you're needed immediately for emergency hurricane operations. Hurricane Petra has intensified beyond all predictions, and civilian evacuation operations require your specialized extreme weather certifications." His use of her military rank and acknowledgement of specialized qualifications revealed professional recognition that her family had never witnessed or understood. Behind Gracia, the dinner guests had abandoned their conversations and moved closer to the entrance, clearly recognizing that they were witnessing something unprecedented in their social experience. Mrs. Kovar, who had been listening to Elena's explanations about Gracia's impulsive military phase, now watched as uniformed officers demonstrated exactly what her service had meant to people who understood military aviation. Captain Svoboda stepped forward with official documentation that explained the nature of the emergency operation. "We have 847 civilian workers trapped on offshore energy platforms in the North Sea. Commercial evacuation. Flights have been grounded due to hurricane conditions, and only Category 4 extreme weather pilots are qualified for platform extraction operations in these conditions." The specific details about her qualifications and the critical nature of the mission contradicted every dismissive comment her family had made about her military training. Victor emerged from the house, his usual confidence replaced by confusion, as he struggled to understand why senior military officers had arrived unannounced at his residence to request his daughter's immediate deployment. "I don't understand," he said slowly. "Gracia has decided to leave the military and join our family business. She's no longer available for these kinds of dangerous assignments." His statement revealed how completely he had convinced himself that Elena's fabricated announcement represented reality. "Lieutenant," Colonel Marais addressed Victor with the patient authority that senior military officers used when explaining operational necessities to civilian officials. "Sir, your daughter is one of only 6 pilots in Europe qualified for extreme weather evacuation operations. Her specialized training and perfect safety record make her essential personnel for this emergency response. The civilian workers' lives depend on pilots with her specific qualifications and experience." The detailed explanation of Gracia's qualifications and their critical importance created profound silence among the assembled dinner guests. Uncle Pavel, who had dismissed military service as inappropriate for women, found himself listening to senior officers explain why Gracia's training made her irreplaceable for life-saving operations. Aunt Petra, who had praised civilian aviation careers over military service, watched as uniformed professionals demonstrated the specialized nature of Gracia's expertise. "How long will this operation require?" Elena asked, her voice reflecting the struggle to reconcile what she was witnessing with her long-standing dismissal of Gracia's military career. The question revealed her dawning realization that her daughter's service involved responsibilities and capabilities that extended far beyond anything she had understood or acknowledged. Major Kratky consulted his operational briefing materials before responding to Elena's question. "Hurricane Petra will make landfall in approximately 4 hours. The extraction window closes at 2,300 hours, after which weather conditions will exceed safety parameters for any aircraft operations. Captain Gracia will be leading a 3-aircraft formation through Category 4 hurricane conditions to evacuate civilian personnel before the storm intensifies further. The technical details of the mission leading multiple aircraft through hurricane conditions that exceeded normal safety parameters revealed the extraordinary Nature of Gracia's qualifications and the critical importance of her specialized training. Victor stood motionless, processing the evidence that his daughter's military career involved life or death responsibilities that he had never understood or acknowledged. "I need to collect my flight gear and report for immediate briefing," Gracia said with the calm professionalism that had characterized her military service. She had trained extensively for exactly this type of emergency operation, practicing extreme weather navigation and platform evacuation procedures that prepared her for situations that civilian pilots never encountered. The mission represented everything she had worked toward. During 3 years of specialized training, Captain Svoboda provided additional operational context that demonstrated the complexity of the evacuation operation. The offshore platforms are experiencing sustained winds of 180 kilometers per hour with gusts exceeding 220 kilometers per hour. Visibility is less than 100 meters, and sea conditions have made surface evacuation impossible. Only pilots with Category 4 extreme weather certifications are qualified to attempt platform operations under these conditions. The specific meteorological data revealed why commercial aviation had been completely grounded, and why only specialized military pilots could attempt the evacuation operation. Alexei, who had dismissed his sister's training as preparation for conflicts that would never occur, found himself listening to detailed descriptions of emergency conditions that required exactly the skills he had characterized as impractical. Lieutenant Colonel Moraes addressed the assembled dinner guests with the authority that accompanied senior military command. "Ladies and gentlemen, you should understand that Captain Gracia is considered one of Europe's most qualified extreme weather pilots. Her perfect safety record and specialized training make her essential personnel for operations that exceed the capabilities of civilian aviation. The 847 workers who will be evacuated tonight owe their lives to pilots with her specific qualifications." The formal recognition of Gracia's expertise and its critical importance created a transformation in the atmosphere among the dinner guests. Mrs. Kovar, who had accepted Elena's dismissive explanations about Gracia's military phase, now understood that she had been witnessing conversations about one of Europe's most qualified emergency response pilots. Dr. Novak, who had characterized military training as preparation for obsolete conflicts, recognized that he had been dismissing capabilities that would save hundreds of lives within hours. "The mission requires immediate departure," Major Kracky explained. "Captain Gracia will pilot the lead aircraft in a formation that includes 2 additional extreme weather specialists. The operation involves multiple platform extractions under conditions that represent the maximum threshold for military aviation safety protocols." The description of her leadership role in such a critical operation contradicted every assumption her family had made about her military responsibilities and capabilities. Elena found her voice, though it carried none of the confidence that had characterized her earlier dismissal of Gracia's career. Is this the kind of mission she performs regularly?" The question revealed her dawning understanding that her daughter's military service involved responsibilities and dangers that exceeded anything she had imagined or acknowledged. "Captain Gracia has completed 14 extreme weather operations during her 3 years of service," Captain Svoboda replied. "She holds certifications in hurricane flying, offshore platform operations, and emergency evacuation procedures that only 12 pilots in Europe possess. Her training and experience make her irreplaceable for operations like tonight's evacuation mission." The detailed enumeration of Gracia's qualifications provided specific evidence that contradicted 3 years of family dismissal. Victor stepped forward, his expression reflecting the struggle to reconcile what he was learning about his daughter's capabilities with his long-standing characterization of her military service as expensive government training for unnecessary conflicts. "I had no idea," he said quietly. "We never understood the nature of her actual responsibilities or the level of her qualifications." The admission represented the first crack in his dismissive attitude toward her military career. "The aircraft is fueled and ready for immediate departure," Major Kratky concluded. "Captain Gracia, your briefing materials are in the lead vehicle. Weather conditions are deteriorating rapidly, and mission success depends on immediate deployment of all qualified personnel." The urgency in his voice reminded everyone present that 847 civilian lives depended on the specialized skills that Gracia's family had spent 3 years dismissing as reckless showboating. Gracia nodded to the assembled officers with the professional bearing that had defined her military service. "I'll be ready for departure in 5 minutes," she replied, demonstrating the calm competence under pressure that had earned her respect from career military personnel. She turned toward the house to collect her flight gear, leaving behind a family and social circle who were only beginning to understand what kind of person they had been dismissing and underestimating. As she walked toward the estate's entrance, Uncle Pavel called out in a voice that carried none of his earlier dismissive confidence, "Gracia, be careful out there." The simple statement represented the first expression of genuine concern for her safety that any family member had offered since her return home, and it revealed how completely the evening's revelations had transformed their understanding of her military career and its importance. Gracia emerged from the estate 5 minutes later wearing her specialized flight suit and carrying equipment that her family had never seen: a helmet designed for extreme weather operations, navigation systems that exceeded civilian aircraft capabilities, and emergency protocols that prepared her for conditions that would ground any commercial pilot in Europe. The transformation from dismissed family disappointment to essential emergency response pilot was complete and undeniable. Major Kratky handed her the mission briefing as she approached the lead vehicle. "Platform Alpha has 312 workers, Platform Beta has 289, and Platform Gamma has 246. All 3 platforms are experiencing structural stress from hurricane conditions, and evacuation must be completed before the storm intensifies further. You'll be flying lead aircraft with Captain Mueller and Lieutenant Novotny as your wingmen." The specific details revealed the magnitude of the operation: 3 offshore platforms, 847 civilian lives, and weather conditions that exceeded the operational limits of every aircraft except specialized military helicopters equipped for extreme weather operations. Elena stood in the estate's doorway, watching her daughter review mission parameters with the calm competence that characterized professional military aviation. "The primary challenge will be platform approach visibility," Captain Svoboda explained, as Gracia studied meteorological data that showed wind speeds and precipitation levels far beyond civilian aviation safety thresholds. Hurricane conditions have reduced visibility to less than 50 meters at platform level, and landing protocols will require precision navigation that exceeds normal instrument flying requirements. Victor listened to the technical briefing with growing understanding that his daughter's specialized training involved capabilities that far exceeded anything he had understood about military aviation. The precision navigation, extreme weather protocols, and emergency evacuation procedures represented years of advanced training that prepared pilots for exactly the kind of crisis that civilian aviation could never handle. As the briefing concluded, Gracia's secure phone displayed real-time weather updates that confirmed the deteriorating conditions. Hurricane Petra had intensified beyond all meteorological predictions, with sustained winds now exceeding 200 kilometers per hour and gusts reaching 250 kilometers per hour. The storm represented the most dangerous weather system to threaten Central Europe in recorded history, and it was accelerating toward landfall faster than originally projected. "Mission timeline is now critical," Lieutenant Colonel Mares announced. "Weather conditions will exceed Category 4 protocols within 2 hours, creating a narrow operational window for platform evacuations. Success depends on immediate deployment and flawless execution of extreme weather procedures. The urgency in his voice reminded everyone present that 847 civilian workers faced certain death if the evacuation operation failed. Gracia climbed into the lead vehicle with the same professional bearing that had sustained her through 3 years of family dismissal and military excellence. Through the vehicle's window, she could see her family's dinner guests standing on the terrace, watching her departure with expressions that mixed amazement, concern, and dawning respect for capabilities they had never understood or acknowledged. Convoy departed the estate with the same precision that had characterized their arrival, disappearing into the gathering storm that would test every skill Gracia had developed during her military career. As they drove toward the airbase, Major Kratky provided final operational updates that confirmed the extreme nature of the mission they were about to attempt. Commercial aviation grounded all flights 4 hours ago, he explained. Emergency. Services have suspended operations due to weather conditions, and Coast Guard vessels cannot approach the platforms due to sea conditions. Military aviation represents the only remaining option for evacuating the civilian workers before hurricane landfall. The information confirmed that Gracia's specialized training made her part of the last line of defense between 847 people and Prussia's certain death. At the airbase, 3 military helicopters sat prepared for immediate departure, their rotors secured against hurricane winds, but engines warm and ready for emergency operations. The aircraft represented the most advanced extreme weather aviation technology available, equipped with navigation systems, communication equipment, and safety protocols that exceeded civilian capabilities by decades of military development. Gracia completed her pre-flight inspection with methodical precision, checking every system that would be critical for survival in hurricane conditions. Her movements demonstrated the calm competence under pressure that had earned her recognition as one of Europe's most qualified extreme weather pilots, and her thoroughness revealed why she had maintained a perfect safety record throughout her military career. As she settled into the pilot's seat and began initializing navigation systems, Gracia thought about her family's dinner guests, who were probably still discussing her sudden departure and trying to reconcile what they had witnessed with their assumptions about military aviation. Within hours, they would learn whether the skills they had dismissed as reckless showboating were sufficient to save 847 lives in the worst hurricane conditions ever recorded in European history. The 3-aircraft formation lifted off into Hurricane Petra at exactly 9:15 p.m., with Gracia piloting the lead helicopter through conditions that exceeded every safety parameter for civilian aviation. Wind speeds at takeoff measured 185 kilometers per hour with gusts reaching 230 kilometers per hour, creating turbulence that would have been impossible for commercial pilots to navigate safely. Gracia's voice came through the formation's communication system with the calm authority that had characterized her military leadership throughout 3 years of specialized training. Formation Alpha. Maintain tight spacing and follow my navigation lead. Visibility is approaching minimum operational limits, and platform approach will require precision instrument flying beyond normal protocols. Her instructions demonstrated the advanced coordination skills that only extreme weather specialists possessed. The flight toward the offshore platforms took the formation through the eye wall of Hurricane Petra, where wind patterns shifted unpredictably, and atmospheric pressure created conditions that challenged even military aircraft designed for extreme weather operations. Captain Mueller and Lieutenant Novotny, both experienced military pilots, struggled to maintain formation spacing in turbulence that exceeded anything they had encountered during training exercises. Platform Alpha in sight, Gracia announced, as her navigation systems identified the first evacuation target through hurricane conditions that had reduced visibility to less than 40 meters. The offshore energy platform appeared through the storm like a ghost, its structure battered by waves exceeding 15 meters in height and winds that threatened to tear apart any aircraft that attempted to land. The platform approach required skills that Gracia had developed through hundreds of hours of extreme weather training, precision navigation in zero visibility, landing procedures that compensated for unpredictable wind patterns, and emergency protocols that prepared her for mechanical failures under impossible conditions. Her perfect safety record throughout 3 years of military service had been earned through exactly this kind of high-stakes operation. Beginning Platform Alpha evacuation, Gracia transmitted as she initiated the most challenging landing sequence of her military career. The platform's landing area measured exactly 12 meters by 8 meters, requiring precision that exceeded normal military protocols by significant margins. Hurricane winds created crosswinds and downdrafts that would have made the approach impossible for any pilot without Category 4 extreme weather certifications. Gracia executed the landing with mathematical precision, compensating for wind patterns that shifted every few seconds and maintaining aircraft stability in conditions that pushed her helicopter to its operational limits. Platform workers who had been trapped for 6 hours in hurricane conditions watched in amazement as military aviation demonstrated capabilities that exceeded their understanding of what aircraft could accomplish in extreme weather. The evacuation of Platform Alpha's 312 workers required 4 round trips through hurricane conditions, with each approach demanding flawless execution of extreme weather protocols that Gracia had mastered through years of specialized training. Between evacuations, she coordinated the formation's approach to Platform Beta, where 289 additional workers waited for rescue that only military extreme weather specialists could provide. Platform Beta approach commencing, Gracia announced, as her formation navigated through hurricane conditions that had intensified beyond meteorological predictions. Wind speeds now exceeded 210 kilometers per hour, with gusts reaching 260 kilometers per hour, creating atmospheric conditions that approach the absolute limits for military aviation operations. The Platform Beta evacuation tested every aspect of Gracia's training and experience. Structural damage from hurricane conditions had reduced the platform's landing area to 8 meters by 6 meters, requiring precision that exceeded anything she had attempted during training exercises. The approach demanded perfect coordination between navigation systems, weather compensation, and emergency protocols that prepared her for mechanical failures under impossible conditions. Captain Muller's voice came through the communication system with obvious strain. "Lead aircraft, my navigation systems are experiencing interference from hurricane conditions. I'm having difficulty maintaining formation spacing in these wind patterns." The admission revealed how completely the mission had pushed military aviation to its operational limits, and why only pilots with Gracia's specialized training could complete the evacuation operation. Acknowledged Formation 2. Gracia replied with the calm competence that had sustained her through 3 years of challenging missions. "Follow my navigation lead and maintain visual contact with my aircraft. I'll guide the formation through platform approaches until your systems stabilize." Her leadership under extreme pressure demonstrated why she had been selected for advancement to specialized command positions that recognized her exceptional capabilities. The final evacuation from Platform Gamma required navigation through hurricane conditions that exceeded Category 4 protocols, pushing military aviation beyond normal safety parameters. Gracia's perfect execution of emergency procedures under impossible conditions saved 246 additional civilian lives and completed an operation that would be remembered as one of the most challenging rescue missions in European military history. The formation departed the offshore platforms with all 847 civilian workers safely evacuated. Gracia's secure phone displayed confirmation messages from emergency command centers across 6 countries. The successful completion of the evacuation operation under extreme hurricane conditions had demonstrated military aviation capabilities that exceeded civilian understanding and proved the critical importance of specialized extreme weather training. At 11:47 p.m., as Hurricane Petra made landfall with unprecedented fury across Central Europe, emergency broadcasts began interrupting regular television programming with news that would transform public understanding of military aviation capabilities. The estate's dinner guests, who had remained at Victor and Elena's home to monitor storm coverage, found themselves witnessing reports about an extraordinary rescue operation that had saved 847 lives under impossible conditions. Were receiving confirmed reports of a successful emergency evacuation from 3 offshore energy platforms in the North Sea, announced the BBC correspondent, her voice carrying the amazement that characterized coverage of unprecedented events. Military sources confirmed that all 847 civilian workers have been safely evacuated despite hurricane conditions that exceeded Category 4 intensity. The operation was completed by Czech Air Force pilots using specialized extreme weather aircraft. Elena sat motionless in her living room, processing the evidence that her daughter's military career had involved capabilities and responsibilities far beyond anything she had understood or acknowledged. The successful evacuation of 847 people, under conditions that had grounded all civilian aviation, contradicted every dismissive comment she had made about Gracia's training and qualifications. Victor emerged from his study carrying his laptop, his face reflecting confusion as he struggled to reconcile what he was learning about military aviation with his long-standing characterization of his daughter's service as expensive government training for unnecessary conflicts. The European Aviation Authority website has posted an official statement, he announced to the assembled guests. They're calling tonight's evacuation operation the most challenging rescue mission in European aviation history. The official recognition from civilian aviation authorities provided undeniable validation of military capabilities that the family had dismissed for 3 years. Mrs. Kovar, who had accepted Elena's explanations about Gracia's impulsive military phase, now understood that she had been listening to conversations about one of Europe's most qualified emergency response pilots. Dr. Novak read from his phone as additional details emerged from official sources. The Czech Ministry of Defense has released a statement identifying the lead pilot as Captain Gracia, a Czech Air Force extreme weather specialist. They're describing her as one of only 6 pilots in Europe qualified for Category 4 hurricane operations. The specific identification of Gracia and her rare qualifications provided concrete evidence that contradicted 3 years of family dismissal. Uncle Pavel, who had dismissed military service as inappropriate preparation for modern challenges, found himself reading official government statements that described his niece's training as essential for emergency operations that civilian aviation could never attempt. The ministry statement says that Captain Gracia maintained perfect navigation and landing precision throughout multiple platform approaches in wind speeds exceeding 210 kilometers per hour. He read aloud, his voice reflecting amazement at capabilities he had never understood. Aunt Petra received a phone call from her neighbor, whose brother worked for the European Emergency Response Coordination Center. They're saying that tonight's operation saved 847 lives that would have been lost without military extreme weather capabilities, she reported to the assembled family. Commercial aviation and emergency services had been completely grounded for hours due to hurricane conditions. The accumulating evidence from multiple official sources created a complete transformation in the family's understanding of Gracia's military career and its importance. Alexei, who had characterized his sister's training as preparation for conflicts that would never occur, watched emergency broadcasts that demonstrated how completely he had misunderstood contemporary military responsibilities and capabilities. The evacuation operation required specialized navigation systems and emergency protocols that only military pilots possess. The television correspondent continued. Weather conditions during the rescue exceeded safety parameters for civilian aviation by unprecedented margins, making military extreme weather specialists the only option for saving the trapped workers. The technical explanation revealed why governments invested enormous resources in pilots like Gracia and why her training represented critical national emergency capabilities. Elena's phone began receiving text messages from family friends and business associates who had learned about Gracia's role in the rescue operation through news coverage and official government statements. Mrs. Svoboda from the Cultural Center wants to know if it's true that Gracia led the helicopter formation that saved all those people. Elena read from her phone, her voice reflecting the struggle to reconcile public recognition of her daughters' heroism with 3 years of family dismissal. Victor studied official aviation reports that describe the technical challenges of tonight's evacuation operation, finally understanding that his daughter's military training had prepared her for responsibilities that exceeded his comprehension. The precision navigation, extreme weather protocols, and emergency evacuation procedures represented capabilities that civilian aviation had never developed and could never attempt. As midnight approached and Hurricane Petra continued its destructive path across Central Europe, the family remained gathered around television coverage that provided detailed accounts of the most successful emergency evacuation in European aviation history. Every report confirmed that Gracia's specialized training had made the difference between 847 lives saved and 847 lives lost, proving the critical importance of military capabilities that her family had dismissed as reckless showboating. At 3:22 a.m., the same 3 military vehicles that had departed the estate 8 hours earlier returned through the subsiding hurricane winds, carrying the pilots who had completed the most challenging rescue operation in European aviation history. The convoy moved with a measured pace that indicated successful mission completion, and the formation's perfect spacing demonstrated the discipline that had made the impossible evacuation achievable. Elena stood at the estate's front entrance, wearing a robe over her evening dress, having remained awake throughout the night monitoring news coverage of her daughter's heroic rescue operation. Victor joined her, carrying printed copies of official government statements that described Gracia's leadership and exceptional capabilities under conditions that had tested military aviation to its absolute limits. The dinner guests who had witnessed Gracia's departure now waited in the estate's main sitting room, their earlier dismissive conversations replaced by amazement and respect for capabilities they had never understood. Mrs. Kovar held newspaper articles that described the technical challenges of extreme weather platform evacuations, finally comprehending why governments maintain specialized military aviation units. Major Kratky emerged from the lead vehicle and approached the estate's entrance with obvious satisfaction. "Mission accomplished," he announced to Elena and Victor. All 847 civilian workers evacuated successfully, with 0 casualties and 0 aircraft damage. Captain Gracia's leadership and exceptional flying skills made the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The formal recognition of Gracia's critical role provided official validation that her family had never offered. Gracia stepped out of the vehicle still wearing her flight suit, her helmet bearing evidence of the extreme conditions she had navigated. Throughout the night, her bearing remained calm and professional, despite having completed an operation that would be studied by military aviation experts for decades, demonstrating the composure under pressure that had characterized her entire military career. "The media's calling you the hurricane hero," Victor said quietly, his voice carrying none of the dismissive confidence that had characterized his interactions with his daughter throughout her military service. "Every news organization in Europe is requesting interviews about tonight's rescue operation." The admission revealed his dawning understanding that Gracia's military career had involved responsibilities and achievements far beyond his comprehension. Elena approached her daughter with tears streaming down her face, finally comprehending the magnitude of what she had been dismissing for 3 years. "Gracia, I owe you an apology that I don't know how to give," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "We failed to understand who you are and what you've accomplished. We failed as your family in every way that matters." The assembled dinner guests gathered around Gracia with expressions that mixed amazement, respect, and embarrassment for their earlier dismissive comments about her military career. Uncle Pavel, who had characterized military service as inappropriate for modern challenges, found himself struggling to reconcile his assumptions with evidence of capabilities that had saved hundreds of lives. "I was wrong about your service," Victor admitted, his usual authority replaced by humility as he processed the gap between his assumptions and reality. "I was wrong about military aviation, wrong about your qualifications, and wrong about the importance of what you do. Tonight proved that your training represents capabilities that civilian aviation can never provide." Dr. Novak stepped forward with official documentation he had printed from government websites. "The European Aviation Authority has issued a formal commendation recognizing your exceptional performance under extreme conditions," he announced. "They're describing your navigation precision and emergency protocols as textbook examples of military aviation excellence." The Civilian Aviation Authority's recognition provided external validation that transcended family opinions. Aunt Petra received another phone call from emergency coordination centers, where officials were still processing the successful completion of an operation that exceeded their most optimistic projections. "They want to know if you'll accept recognition from the European Emergency Response Council," she reported. "They're proposing to establish new extreme weather training protocols based on tonight's mission parameters." Captain Svoboda provided additional context about the operation's significance within military aviation circles. "Captain Gracia's performance tonight will be studied by extreme weather specialists throughout NATO," she explained to the assembled family. The precision navigation and emergency protocols she demonstrated under Category 4 hurricane conditions represent the highest standard of military aviation excellence. As dawn broke over Central Europe, revealing the extensive damage caused by Hurricane Petra's unprecedented intensity, news coverage continued featuring detailed accounts of the only completely successful emergency operation during the storm. Every report confirmed that military extreme weather capabilities had made the difference between massive loss of life and complete evacuation success. Gracia accepted her family's apologies with the same grace and professionalism that had sustained her through 3 years of dismissal and military excellence. "I understand why you were concerned about my career choices," she replied. "But I need you to understand that this mission represents exactly why governments maintain specialized military units. Some challenges require capabilities that civilian organizations can never develop." The conversation that followed lasted until mid-morning, as Gracia finally shared stories about her training, her missions, and the experiences that had shaped her into the pilot whose skills had saved 847 lives during Europe's worst recorded hurricane. Her family listened with respect and amazement, finally understanding the person they had failed to recognize for 3 years. 2 weeks after Hurricane Petra, the Czech Republic's presidential palace hosted an official ceremony honoring the military personnel who had executed Europe's most challenging rescue operation. Gracia stood in her formal dress uniform, wearing decorations that her family was seeing for the first time, medals that represented years of specialized training and exceptional performance under conditions that tested military aviation to its absolute limits. President Zeman addressed the assembled dignitaries, government officials, and international media representatives who had gathered to witness formal recognition of extraordinary military achievement. "Captain Gracia exemplifies the highest standards of military aviation excellence," he announced. Her leadership during Hurricane Petra operations saved 847 civilian lives and demonstrated capabilities that represent the finest traditions of Czech military service. Elena and Victor sat in the front row of the palace's ceremonial hall, wearing expressions that mixed pride with profound regret for 3 years of missed opportunities to understand and support their daughter's remarkable achievements. The formal presidential recognition provided undeniable validation of capabilities they had dismissed as reckless showboating, and the international attention demonstrated the significance of military training they had never understood. The ceremony included detailed presentations about extreme weather aviation that revealed the complexity and importance of Gracia's specialized training. Military aviation experts explained the technical challenges of hurricane platform evacuations, the precision navigation required for zero-visibility approaches, and the emergency protocols that enabled successful operations under conditions that exceeded civilian aviation capabilities by unprecedented margins. The Hurricane Petra evacuation required skills that only 12 pilots in Europe possess, explained General Svoboda, the Czech Air Force commander. Captain Gracia's perfect execution of extreme weather protocols under Category 4+ conditions represents military aviation excellence that will be studied for decades. The specific recognition of her rare qualifications provided official confirmation of expertise that her family had never acknowledged or respected. International military attaches from 6 NATO countries presented formal commendations recognizing Gracia's exceptional performance and its importance for Alliance emergency response capabilities. The German military attaché described her navigation precision as textbook execution under impossible conditions, while the Norwegian representative praised her leadership of the 3-aircraft formation through unprecedented weather challenges. European Aviation Authority presented a civilian commendation that acknowledged the critical importance of military extreme weather capabilities for emergency operations that exceeded civilian aviation limits. Captain Gracia's successful platform evacuations during Hurricane Petra demonstrated why European emergency response depends on specialized military aviation units, the authority's director explained. Her training and capabilities represent essential national security assets that cannot be replicated in civilian organizations. Following the formal presentations, Gracia received the Czech Republic's highest military aviation award, the Distinguished Flying Cross with Combat Citation, recognizing exceptional heroism under extreme conditions. The decoration represented official acknowledgement of capabilities that placed her among the most qualified extreme weather pilots in European military history, and the Combat Citation recognized the life-threatening nature of hurricane operations. Elena approached Gracia after the ceremony, carrying a framed photograph of her daughter receiving the presidential commendation. "I want to display this in our main sitting room," she said quietly. "I want everyone who visits our home to understand what kind of person you are and what you've accomplished." The request represented a complete reversal of 3 years of hiding Gracia's military achievements from family, friends, and social associates. Victor studied the official citation that accompanied Gracia's Distinguished Flying Cross, finally understanding the technical complexity and exceptional nature of her hurricane rescue operation. The citation describes navigation precision and emergency protocols that exceed my understanding of aviation capabilities, he admitted. "I realize now that your military training prepared you for responsibilities that civilian aerospace manufacturing never approaches." Dr. Novak, who had attended the ceremony as a family friend, read official military publications that described Gracia's performance during Hurricane Petra as exemplary execution of extreme weather protocols under conditions that tested military aviation to its operational limits. His academic background in engineering provided context for understanding the mathematical precision and technical expertise required for successful platform evacuations under hurricane conditions. The international media coverage following the presidential ceremony established Gracia as a recognized expert in extreme weather aviation, with requests for interviews from military aviation publications, emergency response organizations, and civilian media outlets interested in understanding the capabilities that had made the Hurricane Petra evacuation possible. The recognition extended far beyond Czech national boundaries, demonstrating the international significance of her specialized training and exceptional performance. As the family departed the presidential palace, Alexei walked beside his sister. With obvious respect for achievements he was only beginning to understand. "I want to learn about your actual military responsibilities and training," he said. "I realize that I've been dismissing capabilities and experiences that I never understood." His request for education, rather than his usual dismissive comments, represented fundamental transformation in family dynamics that had been toxic for 3 years. 6 months after Hurricane Petra, the guest room at the family estate had been converted back into Gracia's childhood bedroom, but now it served as a shrine to military aviation excellence that her family had finally learned to understand and respect. The walls displayed her commendations, flight certifications, and photographs from missions that demonstrated the specialized nature of her training and achievements. The Distinguished Flying Cross occupied the place of honor above her desk, surrounded by official citations that described her exceptional performance under extreme conditions. Elena had personally arranged for professional framing of every military decoration, ensuring that visitors to their home would immediately understand the caliber of person they were meeting and the significance of her service to European emergency response capabilities. Victor had commissioned a custom display case for Gracia's flight equipment, her extreme weather helmet, navigation instruments, and emergency protocols that represented technology and training far beyond civilian aviation capabilities. The display included detailed explanations of each item's purpose and importance, demonstrating his commitment to understanding and sharing knowledge about military aviation excellence that he had dismissed for 3 years. The family's social interactions had been completely transformed by their newfound understanding and respect for Gracia's achievements. Elena introduced her daughter to business associates and family friends as Captain Gracia, the pilot who saved 847 lives during Hurricane Petra, taking obvious pride in military service that she had previously tried to minimize or hide from. Social conversation. Uncle Pavel had become one of Gracia's most enthusiastic advocates, frequently sharing details about her extreme weather qualifications with anyone who expressed interest in military aviation or emergency response capabilities. His complete reversal from dismissive skepticism to genuine admiration demonstrated how thoroughly the Hurricane Petra operation had transformed family understanding of contemporary military responsibilities and challenges. Dr. Novak had written academic articles about the technical achievements demonstrated during the hurricane evacuation, using Gracia's performance as an example of military aviation excellence that exceeded civilian capabilities by unprecedented margins. His engineering background provided credible analysis of the navigation precision and emergency protocols that had made the impossible rescue operation successful under conditions that challenged military aviation to its absolute limits. The family aerospace business had established a new division focused on emergency response equipment, with Victor personally overseeing development of components designed to support extreme weather operations like the Hurricane Petra evacuation. His professional engagement with military aviation requirements represented practical acknowledgement of capabilities he had never understood during 3 years of dismissing his daughter's career. Gracia's promotion to major had been celebrated with a family gathering that included extended relatives, business associates, and neighborhood friends who had previously heard only dismissive comments about her military service. Elena personally contacted everyone who had attended the disastrous dinner party 6 months earlier, ensuring they understood the true nature of Gracia's achievements and qualifications. "I want people to know that we raised someone extraordinary," Elena explained to Mrs. Kovar during a subsequent social gathering. Gracia's military training and achievements represent capabilities that saved hundreds of lives, and I'm proud that our family contributed to developing someone with such exceptional qualifications. The complete reversal of her previous characterizations demonstrated genuine transformation rather than superficial accommodation. Alexei had requested assignment to the family business division that supported military aerospace contracts, explaining that he wanted to understand the technical requirements and challenges that military aviation addressed through specialized training and equipment. His career change represented recognition that his sister's military expertise provided valuable perspective on capabilities that civilian aerospace manufacturing rarely encountered. The promotion ceremony had included international military representatives who described Gracia's Hurricane Petra performance as exemplary execution of extreme weather protocols that would influence military aviation training throughout NATO. The recognition extended beyond Czech national boundaries, establishing her as an expert whose capabilities contributed to alliance emergency response effectiveness. When commercial airlines began requesting consultation about extreme weather procedures, Gracia found herself advising civilian aviation organizations about capabilities that her family had once dismissed as impractical military training. The consulting work provided additional income while demonstrating practical applications of specialized military expertise in civilian emergency response contexts. The European Emergency Response Council had appointed Gracia to develop new extreme weather protocols based on lessons learned during Hurricane Petra operations. The appointment recognized her expertise while creating official channels for sharing military aviation capabilities with civilian emergency response organizations throughout Europe. Victor had framed newspaper articles about Gracia's achievements and displayed them prominently in his office, ensuring that business associates understood his family's connection to one of Europe's most respected extreme weather pilots. The public recognition of her military excellence had become a source of family pride rather than embarrassment or concern about neighborhood opinions. Elena maintained correspondence with military families throughout the Czech Republic, sharing resources and support networks that helped other parents understand the significance and importance of contemporary military service. Her advocacy work represented ongoing commitment to supporting military families while acknowledging her previous failures to understand her daughter's achievements and sacrifices. 2 years after Hurricane Petra, Gracia stood before a gathering of military aviation cadets at the Czech Air Force Academy, wearing the rank insignia of lieutenant colonel and carrying the authority that came from proven excellence under the most extreme conditions imaginable. The Academy had invited her to deliver the keynote address for graduation ceremonies, recognizing her as an exemplary military officer whose achievements demonstrated the highest standards of aviation excellence and emergency response capability. Excellence in military aviation isn't measured by perfect weather flying. Gracia began, addressing the assembled cadets who represented the next generation of Czech military pilots. It's proven when impossible conditions require capabilities that only specialized training can provide, and when civilian lives depend on skills that separate military aviation from every other form of flying. Her words carried the authority of someone who had saved 847 lives through precisely those specialized capabilities. Elena and Victor sat in the Academy's honored guest section, wearing expressions of pride that would have been unimaginable during the family gathering where they had dismissed her military career as a dangerous phase. The transformation from embarrassed parents trying to hide their daughter's service to honored guests celebrating her leadership of military aviation training represented complete reversal of 3 years of toxic family dynamics. The graduation ceremony included presentation of the newly established Gracia Hurricane Response Award, annual recognition for cadets who demonstrated exceptional aptitude for extreme weather operations. The Academy had created the award following detailed analysis of the Hurricane Petra evacuation, using her performance as the standard for excellence in emergency response flying that exceeded normal military aviation requirements. Following her keynote address, Gracia participated in a panel discussion about contemporary military challenges that required specialized aviation capabilities. International military experts described how climate change was creating emergency conditions that exceeded traditional disaster response protocols, making extreme weather specialists essential for European security and civilian protection. The Hurricane Petra operation demonstrated why military aviation capabilities cannot be replaced by civilian emergency services, explained NATO's Emergency Response Coordinator. Lieutenant Colonel Gracia's specialized training and exceptional performance saved lives that would have been lost without military extreme weather capabilities that civilian organizations can never develop or maintain. The panel discussion included detailed technical presentations about navigation systems, emergency protocols, and aircraft modifications that enabled military pilots to operate under conditions that grounded civilian aviation. The complexity and sophistication of extreme weather training revealed why governments invested enormous resources in specialists like Gracia, and why her capabilities represented critical national security assets. After the ceremony, Gracia's family joined her for dinner at the Academy's Officers Club, where military personnel from across Europe shared stories about operations that had been influenced by protocols developed from Hurricane Petra. Lessons learned. The international recognition of her expertise demonstrated how single exceptional performances could influence military aviation training throughout NATO alliance structures. Victor had established scholarship programs for military aviation candidates, focusing on students who demonstrated aptitude for extreme weather specializations. His financial support represented practical acknowledgement of military training importance while creating opportunities for developing capabilities that his own understanding had initially rejected. The scholarships ensured that future generations would receive training that prepared them for challenges like Hurricane Petra. Elena's advocacy work had expanded to include European-wide networks supporting military families, with particular focus on helping parents understand contemporary military service and its importance for national security. Her presentations at family support conferences drew from personal experience about transformation from dismissive skepticism to genuine appreciation for military excellence and sacrifice. Alexei had completed advanced training in military aerospace engineering, qualifying him to support development of equipment designed for extreme weather operations. His career change represented recognition that military aviation requirements exceeded civilian aerospace capabilities, and his expertise contributed to technological advances that enhanced pilot safety and operational effectiveness under challenging conditions. The Hurricane Petra evacuation had become a case study taught at military academies throughout Europe, with Gracia's navigation precision and emergency protocols serving as examples of excellence under extreme pressure. The operation's success demonstrated why governments maintained specialized military units capable of responding to emergencies that exceeded civilian capabilities. As the evening concluded, Gracia reflected on the journey from family dismissal to international recognition, understanding that the greatest victories are often won not through dramatic confrontation, but through patient dignity and professional excellence that eventually speaks for itself. Her military service had survived 3 years of family skepticism and emerged stronger through vindication that came from saving lives rather than seeking approval. The Hurricane Petra operation would be remembered as one of Europe's most successful emergency evacuations. But for Gracia's family, it represented something more profound. The moment they finally understood who their daughter had become and what she had accomplished through dedication to service that transcended personal comfort and family expectations. Sometimes, the greatest storms reveal not just our weaknesses, but our hidden strengths. And sometimes the people closest to us are the last to see the heroes we've become. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.